Hi everyone. So today we're going to speak about Sybil attacks and proof of humanity. So let's take a really basic problem of how to distribute a cryptocurrency. Ideally, we will want to just give the same amount of token to everyone and give a fair distribution. But if we just do one token, one to each account, we're going to have this happening. We're going to have a malicious user who's going to register tons of accounts and get most of the coin. So because of that, we could not just do one person, one coin. We had to use proof of work. So at the beginning with proof of work, the idea was to be one CPU, one coin. But unfortunately, we got miners, we got ASICs, we got difference in CPU power, and it did not end up that way. So even proof of work is something which was created for and against the Sybil attack. And it cannot manage it to avoid Sybil attack, but led to some really unfair result where we have a few huge miners which get the coin, and most of the people are unable to mine. So we kind of solve the problem, but not in a fair way. So let's see about other use cases of anti-Sybil systems. So we spoke about basic income, which is one person, one coin, user, freebies and airdrops. So we've seen that. We put some airdrop, and we got a lot of people registering. And I think some of them were not really legit, and were just like fake account, fake social media account. Some other projects, they also look at Ethereum address, for how long they had ETH on them, a minimum of ETH on them. And it worked for one time, because people were not aware that such airdrop would be done. But now, if you try to do that again, we're going to have attackers which are just put their ETH into tons of small addresses and get way more airdrop. Quadratic funding, we're speaking a lot about Gitcoin and Gitcoin grants. So here you can see with ETHHub and Austin Griffiths. So ETHHub got $5,000 worth of donation, which was led to $16 worth of matching. And Austin got $8,000 worth of donation, which led to only $15 worth of matching. So we can see with this quadratic funding is that the matching that you get is not just proportional to the amount of donation that you get. You can see here how we compute quadratic funding matching. So basically, if you have 2 donations of 5 ETH, you're going to get more matching than if you get 1 donation of 10 ETH. So again, we get an identity problem, which is if I want to maximize my matching, I can just split my donation in a lot of different accounts. So currently, that's really like a community project, that's donation, that's like blockchain for good. So we did not really see that much attack on those systems. But it's working basically because no one is trying to effectively attack them yet. And because there is some centralized point where they could eventually cancel the grants in case of attacks. Democratic governance. We speak a lot about blockchain governance. We speak a lot about what is legitimate to make decisions in Ethereum. And we've seen stuff like coin voting. We've seen stuff like miner vote, miner explanation of what they would want for the system. But coin voting is generally plutocratic. If you are a whale, if you are a VC, you will tend to have way more coin than a small holder, and miners are only a really specific part of the community and may not have incentive which are matching the whole community. And if you want to make some account voting, that's impossible because I can just create tons of fake accounts. Under-collateralized loan or uncollateralized loans. If you want to allow people to borrow some money and not ask any collateral, which is what most of the people think when they speak about loans, you need to have a Sybil-resistant identity system. Because otherwise, I can make an ID, I can take a loan, never pay it back, make a new ID, take another loan, never pay it back. So it's not practical. You cannot lend money to people if you cannot control what is a user in your system, and you can just simulate being tons of multiple users. So perhaps the oldest problem where we got Sybil attacks was in spam. So initially, proof of work was created for that, was created to avoid spam. It was created as a way to require some computational work for sending some emails. In practice, it was never really took off, and people use filter and other techniques. But that was the basic goal and the basic idea behind proof of work. So if you are on a DApp, and let's say that we are on a social network, like the Web3 version of Facebook, how do you prevent someone from making a bot which is writing on every kind of post, which is spamming everything? If you have identity, you can limit the amount of posts to the number of posts that a human can reasonably make. But now, if you don't have Sybil-resistant identity, I can just create tons of fake accounts, and each of my fake accounts is going to post 10 posts, and they're not going to be linked together, and I can spam the network. So in the Web 2, there has been some way to kind of like alleviate that, but they are not really user-friendly. We end up writing CAPTCHA, reading some door number, which are sometimes quite unreadable. We have phone verification, but even phone verification is not that Sybil-proof, because you can just buy tons of SIM card to simulate tons of users. So even in Web 2, that's a problem which is really like unsolved. So now that we've seen that it was a problem which was important, we can ask ourselves, is this problem hard? And it may seem that it is. So we spoke about the Sybil attack since 2002 in this research paper introduced by Dusser, and he produced and he gave proof of 4 lemmas about Sybil attacks. So the first one is if P is a ratio of the resource of a faulty entity, F to the resource of a minimally capable entity, then F can present G equal P rounded down, distinct, and the entity to the local entity L. What does it mean, basically? It means that if, for example, we ask one CPU to be considered to be one identity, if there is someone which has 6 CPU, it can be considered to be 6 identities. So you could say, OK, he has too much identity, let's increase the requirement and now require 6 CPU to be considered an identity. But now everyone else doesn't have any identity. So if we use some system linked to proof of work, will it be machine work or will it be human work? You have some user which can produce more work than others, and so they are going to be able to get more identities than others. Other problem, if a local entity L accepts entities that are not validated simultaneously, then a single faulty entity F can present arbitrarily large number of distinct identity to entity L. So what does it mean? It means that if you ask some proof of work and you don't ask this proof of work to only be done within a specific time frame, you can have an attacker which is going to do it in the first time frame, but also going to do it in the second time frame, the third time frame, and is going to do it over and over and get more identities. So if you want to use proof of work, you need to verify everyone at the same time. So, OK, perhaps proof of work may not be that useful to the Sybil-resistant system. Now let's look at a graph-based system. Let's think that, OK, you want to be added into the network. You need to have people in the network vouching for you. But again, we get this lemma. So if our local entity L accepts any identity vouch for by Q accepted identity, then a set F of faulty entities can present an arbitrarily large number of distinct identity to L if either the amount of entity in F is greater or equal to Q, or the collective resources available to F at least equal to those of Q plus the amount of entity in F, minimally capable entities. So what does it mean? If we have, for example, 2 require connection to be added to the set of accepted identities, as long as an attacker gets those 2 connections, he can add another identity, then use it to add another identity, and add another identity. So you could say, OK, let's ask for 5 people to add a new identity. But in this case, when the system will grow, as soon as you find 5 malicious participants, you can keep adding and adding extra fake identities. So last lemma, if the correct entities in a set C do not coordinate time interval during which they accept identity, and if a local entity L accepts any identity vouched by Q accepted identities, then even a minimally capable faulty entity F can present G equal number of entity in C divided by Q rounded down to L. So basically, what does it mean? It means that if to add someone to your list of entity you trust, you ask this person to do some work. So for example, you could make a video and you need to do the video in front of 2 people and they verify that you perform a task in this video. You can attack the system by doing the video in front of 2 people, and then you can choose 2 other people and 2 other people if the video does not need to be done synchronously, not be done at the same time. So you can keep adding new identity by finding new nodes of the network and giving them some proof of work at different time to create fake identities. So yeah, that seems to be quite hard, but that's also a quite old problem because that's 2002. So now let's look at a solution out there. So perhaps the most obvious or simple solution when we get this kind of problem is just we fall back to the centralized system and we think, okay, there will be this centralized state or this centralized agency which is going to give us some identities. So you have passports. Passports are not really that useful, but some country like Estonia are providing you some ID cards that you can use to sign. So we could say, okay, let's state do that. In practice, that used to be quite problematic because if we allow any state to create identities, we just need one rogue state, North Korea, for example, to just create tons of fake identity to overcome the network. So it's not a satisfactory solution. In the Ethereum ecosystem, we saw the first project trying to solve this problem, which was the Humanity DAO, made as a side project by a member of the Marble team. So this is basically a curated registry with the simplest scheme possible. You have token holders. When there is someone asking to be added to the registry, he puts a deposit, and token holders, they vote to accept it or reject it. And there is no reward involved. We just have token holders voting benevolently if possible. But they're not punished if they do bad votes. So it worked a bit at the beginning, but quite soon we got a problem of having either some real people which did not get accepted because their social media were not prolific enough, and we also got people managing to use fake social media accounts to create proof of humanity, to create Humanity DAO extra identities. So we basically got the same problem that we will get in the social media, which were not Sybil proof resistant. So we cannot create a Sybil proof resistant system by using data of a previous system which was not Sybil proof resistant in the first place. So the experiment ended up perhaps like 1 month ago, and overall less than half of the applicants were added to the registry. So there were a few people which managed to be added multiple times, but the biggest problem was that real people did not manage to get added because they did not seem real enough even if they were. Another project, which is quite interesting, is IDENA. Here you can see flips. So that's stories which may which normally have a specific order, where there is one order which makes more sense than the other one. So if you think that the order on the left makes more sense, please raise your hand. Order on the left is the one making more sense. 1, 2, 3, 4. So approximately 33 people. Sorry, the order on the right. 1, 2, 3 people. No, 5. Okay. And if you think none of that makes sense to you and none of them make sense, yeah, 8. Okay, so we got like 33, 5, and 8. So we can see that for most people, so 33 out of 50 which answered, the left one makes more sense because there is some water in a glass, a cat goes there, you put the water on the ground, and then you need to clean it up. So this makes sense. And this project is using those flips and asking, obviously, people to do that at the same time, because otherwise we get the problem of lemma 2, which is that you could keep doing verification all the time and get more identities than people doing it only once. And you also get the problem of lemma 1. As you can see in the room, some people were better at solving those flips than other people. So you may get one identity if you're a normal person. If you're trained a bit, you may be able to get 2 or eventually 3 if you become really good at solving those flips. So that solves the problem more or less to a 1 to 3 order of magnitude, let's say. Other range of approach can be social graph analysis. So that's what we are looking at in lemma 3 and 4. We can have algorithm to evaluate social graph to find if it makes sense or not. So here we have a tightly connected cluster, lot of people all connected together. So that may seem fishy, so that's maybe an attack and not real people. Or here we have some loosely connected cluster. So there is only perhaps 2 or 3 participants of this cluster which are linked to the general cluster, and then all of the others are linked together, but not to the rest of the cluster. So again, it looks a bit strange. You have algorithm to evaluate that, to evaluate if a particular node is likely to be a Sybil or not. One limitation of this kind of system is mirror attacks. So if you have this graph, and I'm an attacker, and in this case, I just have the complicity of this person on the bottom, I can add other identities to make a mirror graph. And now you have, from an algorithmic perspective, identities on the left and identity on the right are equivalent. So an algorithm which just gets this graph will have no way to find out which part is the Sybil part and which part is the legit part. So for this graph-based method, we need to rely on a trusted set. So some initial node need to be trusted from the beginning, and they are used to evaluate the likeliness that other nodes are real people or not. So you have the Bright Ivy project doing this kind of approach. Okay, so now that we've seen the problem was hard, the problem was useful, and a few other methods which were used by other projects. So 2 of those projects, they were not based on Ethereum, so it's not really helping us when we want to make a dApp which need to have a Sybil proof identity. And Humanity DAO basically is over and the project has closed. So we end up having no way to get identities on Ethereum which are Sybil proof. So let's present what we are developing, proof of humanity. So with proof of humanity, we're going to combine a graph-based approach and a TCR-based approach. So I want to add myself to the list of real human. So I'm going to put a deposit. I'm going to complete some information. I'm going to put a small video of me. We say, hey, I'm a real human. I'm not in this registry. Please add me to the registry and put my address. But that's not enough. I need to find people who are already registered. So I'm going to find someone who is going to vote for me. I'm going to find another person who is going to vote for me. And now I have a complete submission. I have some already registered people voting for me. And I have an entry that I want to add in this TCR. So now I'm going to wait. And apparently, you all seen I'm mainly legit. There is not that much in this registry, so no one looking like me there. So nothing is going to happen. And after a challenge period, I'm going to get added to the registry and get my deposit back. Now, let's look at what would happen for malicious people. So here, an attacker first is going to need to find 2 people voting for him, which is possible. There may be 2 people who are malicious. That's quite easy to find. He's going to put a deposit, he's going to put his information, and he's going to ask to add himself in the registry. Fortunately, we can have a challenger which is looking at the registry, and he may be benevolent, or he may just want to make money by taking the deposit of attackers. So he's going to challenge this registration. He has different reasons to challenge. So we could say that the submission is incorrect. So it's a procedural error. So the video was not done according to specification. The address is unreadable. So basically, I'm not saying you're a bad guy, but you did not follow the rule. And I don't think you should be registered. Deceased, which can also be a problem, because that's a registry of humans. We want a registry of humans which are alive, because otherwise we're going to end up with tons of identity of people who are dead which can be traded. So we don't want that. So if someone was already registered 100 or 200 years ago, we may want to put more scrutiny and verify this person is still alive and potentially challenge if it's someone who is already dead. Duplicate. That's where it gets interesting. So all the people in the registry, we can see information about them. We can see their video. And now, if I try to register a second time, someone can point out to the previous video I made and say, OK, those 2 people are the same. That's a duplicate, and that's a fake registration, and it should not be added. At the beginning, if you just get like 4 people in the registry, you can do that manually. If we end up having like 1,000 or 100,000, you will obviously have some specific tools which allow you to match people who are looking alike, and then you do your human work, but you can do some computer-assisted work to find duplicates. And the does not exist, which is basically, it's not a human. Now I drew a video of someone, or I made a deepfake video of someone, and I try to add that to the registry. So some people can be a bit scared about deepfake, because we could just make tons of invented and fake people to register. In practice, deepfake creation algorithm contains a deepfake detection algorithm. So even if there is some kind of arm race between deepfake and humans, the arm race is not that valid at the algorithmic level. So you can use the same algorithm to create deepfake to detect deepfakes. So in our case here, that was duplicate. The guy was already registered. So no honest participant, or just a participant which wants to get paid, is going to challenge. You can put some evidence to support your claim. And in particular, if you think that it's a duplicate, you're going to need to point out which submission it's a duplicate of. Then we go to Kleros. You've seen Kleros dispute resolution system in some of the other talk. So it's going to draw some jury members, and they're going to look at evidence of both parties. And in this case, they're going to conclude that, OK, those 2 devils, they really look alike. So probably that's a duplicate, and we should not accept him to the registry. Some part of the deposit is going to be used to pay the juror, and some other part of the deposit is going to be used to reward the challenger. So challengers are rewarded well, but obviously most of the time, most of the submissions they look, they are submissions of honest people. So when they find honest people, they are not rewarded. But perhaps the 1 in 10 or 1 in 100 that they find, which is a dishonest submission, should reward for all the watchdog work that they are doing. Here, we can find something quite interesting about attacks, is that we don't need to have a perfect TCR. We don't need to have a perfect jury system. We don't need to find out all the attackers. Because we had this devil and this prisoner guy which vouched for fake submission, we got them removed from the registry. So the system only need to catch an amount of fake identity of fake submission such that the probability of an attack success is lower than 1 minus 1 divided by the number of vouchers. So in this case, because we ask 2 vouchers, as long as your probability to make a successful attack is lower than 2/3, you on average don't win identities. Like if you have 2/3, 2 out of 3 times you're gonna win 1 identity, 1 out of 3 times you're gonna lose 2 identities. So on average, you don't win or lose identity. On average, you just lose money from deposit. So well, this is interesting because even with an imperfect system, we can make identity creation and Sybil attack infeasible. So you may be sometimes be able to make fake identities, but by doing so, you risk removing your real ones. Now that we've seen the system, I guess a lot of you could think, okay, we are linking our identity into a blockchain thing where everything is transparent. Aren't we like putting this kind of dystopian system that we were trying to prevent when we started working in decentralized technology? If we were to do just that, yeah, without anonymity, yeah, that would obviously be really, really bad from a privacy perspective. But we can use some method which are quite similar to the method to mix the cryptocurrencies, to mix identities. So we have this wonderful tool which is traceable ring signatures, where we can have a ring of people which can sign some message. When they sign a message, we know it's someone of the ring who signed this message. And if someone signed 2 messages, we can find out that someone signed 2 messages, and we can find out who signed those 2 messages. So basically, a group of people can come with their identity, make a ring signature scheme, sign to create a new identity, and if everyone signs only once, they each get a new identity which is not linked to their previous one. If someone signs multiple times, he's going to not get anything. That's going to be funded by the contract that 2 signatures came from the same address. But only if 2 signatures come from the same address, we can find out that this person signed multiple times. Otherwise, we don't know who signed. So by doing this, we are basically mixing identities. It's not perfectly privacy preserving, because even if you don't know which identity belongs to whom, you know that an identity in gray belongs to someone of this cycle. In practice, we can have obviously bigger cycles, and you could even have multiple rounds of anonymization to get better anonymity between participants. So that's on the second layer technology possible. So I've presented the Sybil attack problem, which is a quite old one, a quite hard one. I presented a few solutions which are there in the global web ecosystem, and that we don't have any one for the Ethereum ecosystem as of now. We presented Proof of Humanity, which currently has a UI design done and has a smart contract done. And we are still working with people of Democracy Earth and of the Kleros team to implement a front end to that. And obviously, you are really welcome to participate and help, or just welcome to use this system once it goes live for your application, which requires some identity or anti-spam tool. Thanks, everyone. We have a bit of time for question. Any question? Yeah? Oh, yeah, the mic is coming.
Hello. Thank you very much. Let's say that the system gets really big, for example, 1 million users. How would the prevention of an attack, or an attacker who would apply on one end of the system and on the other end of the system, how could you prevent that?
Oh, so you can use a computer-based tool to find out if two video submissions are similar. And at the end of the day, of course, you have a human which is going to create a challenge or not, but they can be helped. So if you have a new submission, you can have a tool which gives you, okay, these are the 10 people looking the most alike. So try to verify if one of them is correspond to this new submission. And if it does, you can challenge it. But at the beginning, as long as so at the beginning, we don't need to develop this kind of system at the beginning, because at the beginning we're gonna get 100 people, everyone is gonna know, and by the time we get this amount of people, we have time to use the solution. And that's image processing, so machine vision solution, which are already out there. We just need to apply them to this particular use case, but that's technology which is already up there.
Right. And is the video stored after that the verification is completed?
On IPFS, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And again, that's why it's super important to mix identities after, because you don't want to have your activity linked to the video that you made.
Hello. You said that you require a proof of the non-existence of a person, and I can hardly imagine what such a proof could be, because it's hard to get documents.
Oh yeah, like it's hard to prove a negative. So in this case, you don't really prove that they don't exist. You prove that the video was like a drawing or was a deepfake, but was not a real human behind. And if you want to prove that's a deepfake, you're going to use some deepfake detection algorithm, which are going to give you a likelihood for it to be a deepfake. And if this person cannot give additional evidence showing that they are real, that they are not a deepfake, they're going to get rejected. But you don't need to do huge scrutiny to everyone. You only need to do like due process when you have people challenging.
Thanks a lot for your talk. Speaking of the deepfakes, I mean, I'm not a data scientist, but looking a bit into the future, like 5 to 10 years, are you certain that we will have a like deepfake detection algorithm that will be able to separate deepfakes from actual video or picture content? Because I think like high-level machine intelligence will definitely, or intuitively, I would say that it should be possible to.
So it's possible to have a change of like paradigm in the way that you make deepfake, but the current way that people make deepfake is through adversarial neural network, where basically you have a detector network and a generator network. So you have a generator network which is creating some deepfake, which at the beginning are really, really bad, and you have a detector network which is detecting if they are deepfake or not. So the generator detects deepfake, it's sent back to the detector. The detector gives some ranking of how likely they are to be deepfake or not, and then the generator uses this information back to readapt to generate more convincing deepfake. And on the other side, the detector can then also use, after the detection, use information of the generator if they are a real image or if they are a deepfake, because you also put a real image of real people to train the detector, and then the detector readapt. So you have this kind of arm race between a detector and a generator, which is adversarial neural network, which is used currently to make deepfakes. It's also possible that at some point you may have better generators than detector through other means of generating deepfakes. But in this case, the system is quite flexible. You could ask other kind of evidence. Like if one kind of evidence becomes really easy to fake, you can make a governance vote and change what are the admissible evidence. And the governance vote, you can even do it with one people, one voice, using the Sybil proof identity you just created.
Okay, thanks.
Any last question? Okay, so thank you everyone, and don't hesitate to say hi to me and we can speak more in depth. Thank you everyone.